I want to talk a little about HTC and its role in supportive housing. You know, and I want to start not at supportive housing, but with senior housing, okay? Because since the plan, the mayor's housing plan was announced in 2003, we've financed 49 elderly housing projects at HTC, sometimes with HPD money, but in the main without. 5,500 units roughly, over $1 billion of financing. We've done 202s, refinancing and restructuring of 202s with Progress of People, you know, Catholic Charities, with MBD, with West Harlem Group Assistance, with St. Nick's. We've done new construction deals with Ford and Bedford, and HPD was involved in that deal, and with several with self-help. In other words, we've been very active in this realm. We've been able to, you know, bring our ability to access capital markets and generate revenues from that access, and bring our subsidy, our corporate reserves to those deals, and finance a fair amount of elderly housing in the city of New York. And we're very proud of that. You know, we're very, you know, I think a measure of a great society or a decent society is the extent to which they support and provide the services that are necessary for their most vulnerable populations, including the elderly, but others. That's a measure of a decent society. And I think that that's a commitment to a decent society that the administration's had and that all the folks up here have had. You know, but if you go from that to supportive housing, what you'll see is that our numbers fall off dramatically. So in this 10-year period of time, really, prior to Matthews and that, you know, commitment on supportive housing, if you add up our numbers then, it comes out to 8 developments, 1,100 units, and of the 11 or 1,200 units, only about 400 of those units are supportive housing units. You know, and I want to talk a little about why that's been the case and what the current environment means for our involvement in supportive housing going forward. Just 2 days ago, I was up at Capitol Hall, which some of you may know, you know, up on 87th Street that Goddard Riverside is currently rehabbing, and it was spectacular. You know, it really was. It's an amazing, amazing development because that's a 100-year-old building. It was built in, I think, 1913. When I was at HPD many decades ago, you know, I remember Capitol Hall being on one of the lists of deals we were going to do, and in fact, it was done back in 87, 88, with a very light scope of work, and then the folks at Goddard Riverside using baling wire and bubble gum have kept that place together over these many years, and with support from HPD. And now this major renovation is being undertaken at Capitol Hall. I mean, just a spectacular renovation where they've drilled, you know, put a new core in 2 parts of the building, or 3 maybe. They're going to have new staircases that go from the ground floor up to the top that are, you know, fire resistant and meet all the necessary code. You know, and to do that, they're relocating tenants all over, I think, the Upper West Side with the help of other groups up there. You know, so Stefan Russo and Kathy Herman are doing a spectacular job, and it's emblematic of the enormous competency that exists within the supportive housing industry within New York City. You know, you know, there was a groundbreaking recently, a couple of days ago, that I was unable to go to with barrier-free living, where again, you know, a big chunk of the units there, are virtually all of it, new construction developments, 2 separate buildings, are devoted to supportive housing. And again, it represents, you know, on the one hand, the terrific, you know, ambition and competency of the groups, but also the immense support that HPD provides to this effort. Our involvement, though, is only possible when we have secure streams of income to developments. You know, in other words, the way we bring our capital to the table as a lender is we issue bonds, and we sell the bonds to investors out in the marketplace. And we take the proceeds from the bonds and we lend them to developments over here. So what we're lending is really hard debt. It's not soft debt. It's not subordinate debt. It's not the 1% interest-only debt that HPD can provide through its capital, or that we provide through our corporate reserves. What we're lending is hard debt. It must be repaid. And not just 6 months from now, but on a monthly basis, that debt service payment needs to be made. And to ensure that that's the case, to ensure that neither we nor the organization that's running supportive housing, you know, the nonprofit who's involved in that, or the tenants in these buildings are put at risk, we need a secure source of income, rental income, to support that financing. And a key to that has always been, and will be going forward, project-based Section 8 in one form or another. I mean, if you look at these two developments that I mentioned, Capitol Hill, it's an old mod Section 8 project. You know, they have a HAP contract. It's been going on and on. If you look at Barrier Free, again, they have Section 8 contract involved in that deal. So there we can look at the deal and say, okay, we know the income's going to be here to support our debt. And but absent that, then, you know, that's not a development that we're really going to be able to commit to. And so really, when you get down to it, drill down the next level, what we're really, the fate of our involvement in these forms of financing is a function of what goes on in Washington and what happens to Section 8. And I think as we move along in this panel, we'll talk more about this. But the sequester and the general environment in Washington today put at great risk our ability to provide the capital that otherwise we can access. You know, enormous, really enormous. We've put over $7 billion of debt and subordinate debt into deals since 2003. We can access capital. But to do that when it comes to supportive housing, we need, in effect, the commitment of the federal government to that enterprise, and most importantly, the commitment of Congress to ensure that the necessary resources available not only to us in New York City, but everybody nationally. And so on that cheery note, or on that note, you know, I'm going to hand it off to Darryl.